might want to start talking, because I got a long history of firing at times like this.
My name's Cable. I'm from the future. Just walk away.
Hello and welcome back to A Stark Contrast, where we discuss the differences and similarities from Marvel Comics to their MCU counterparts. And we are your hosts, Geoffrey
and Dai.
Hello, and welcome back, everybody.
Welcome back.
We are here.
Long time no see, Jeff.
Oh yeah.
So Jeff and I, just to nip it in the bud, Jeff and I are recording right after the release of our Colossus episode because we're trying to get ahead of all the craziness that is San Diego Comic-Con next week, or at least this week.
Oh, yeah.
So if you're listening to this show right now on release day, this is day 3/4 of San Diego Comic-Con where I am. Yes. And so we're recording so we don't miss a beat. We have not missed a recording yet. Yes. And we're not going to start anytime soon. So henceforth.
And we have, hopefully both of us, have seen Deadpool and Wolverine at this point.
Oh my God, please.
I know so. I have.
Yeah. Dai will be, mine is up in the air. Like I have tickets for Thursday, but if I get into this Deadpool and Wolverine special Hall H thing.
It's going to be very, very difficult for Dai, especially where she's going to be at
my God.
in San Diego if she doesn't at least see the movie Thursday or Friday.
I know.
Because if she doesn't,
I'll have to wait till Sunday night.
It's not even that. You're going to have to avoid
everything.
People.
Yeah, exactly. It might be
because someone's going to say
War
something
guy.
out loud.
Yeah, exactly.
And I can't text you.
Yeah, nope. And I have to stay off social. Like if I'm on social,
pretty much have to.
I can only post and I gotta ghost.
Yeah.
And that's it.
You got to put blinders on.
100%.
You got to learn how to type
filter. Oh yeah, I've already had filters on X by now. On Twitter.
I'm probably gonna be texting Dai. Just be like, I'm gonna be like Die.
Oh, yeah, that's good enough.
Die. He dies. I'm just kidding.
I mean, that'd be a given, right?
I don't know, but yeah.
So hopefully we have both seen it by now. But hopefully you have too, and we'll be raving about it together in our next episode. But first, before we get to this week's episode, let's go through a few of the news points. So, aside this ultimate Deadpool Wolverine celebration of life panel that they've added very last minute to San Diego Comic-Con, they also dropped the new or first trailer for Captain America Brave New World.
First teaser,
which was jam-packed with stuff. I'm starting to see the eagle eye posts go up. And so, of course, people are like, Tiamat is in it. And now they're finally addressing the Celestial that was in the Eternals 3 years ago, which is probably 2 years in MCU continuity. Who knows? Yeah, so they're finally addressing that. And then, some people have spotted Easter eggs here and there. It's kind of insane.
Yeah.
I'm trying to avoid a lot of them. I've seen some of them. I'm excited. I think it definitely
looks great.
It changed the course of what lack of hype there was, for sure. I think people are really worried because of the last minute entry of Giancarlo Esposito. And so now they're like, oh, this looks really good.
I thought it was really good.
I think it's fantastic.
Sam looks really good.
Yeah, I'm feeling the new suit. Like, I know people were kind of bummed because his Falcon and Winter Soldier suit was so comics accurate that it was it's a deviation from that. But I love how tight and crisp this new suit looks, and it's like an equivalent of Captain America Steve Rogers' suit in his own way. And so
also his suit is
so good.
It's made by Wakandans.
Exactly.
His wings are vibranium.
He's got that, exactly. His entire he's essentially impenetrable and so durable now, considering he has to go against Red Hulk. So I think it's brought some much needed calmness and hype at the same time to the MCU fandom, and excited for that because love me some street level spy genre goodness. But we'll talk about that in due time, no doubt. And in other news, so back to San Diego, because this is going to be basically top on mind until we record our next episode. But in addition to the previously mentioned Deadpool Wolverine panel, Kevin Feige will be joining in the Marvel Comics Marvel Fanfare panel on Friday, which I told Jeff, I was like, this is very interesting because Lord Feige has never once been anywhere but the stage of Hall H.
Yeah.
So for him to join the Marvel Fanfare panel, which is a smaller panel, generally comic book centric, very curious.
Maybe he just cares that much.
I would love that because James Gunn, Lord Almighty, he's kind of dipping his toe into the comic space as well, and he's shouting out his comic book people. I would love to see Kevin Feige be more like that. So it'll be very interesting to see what they reveal at that panel. But of course, in addition to both of those aforementioned panels, there is still Hall H on Saturday night, which, by the way, Jeff, I didn't text you this as you were driving here, but I saw confirmation that on a recent Zoom call, as recent as I think this week, in the last 48 hours of this recording, Sebastian Stan
Jesus
confirmed that he's coming to San Diego.
Wait.
And that the Thunderbolts trailer is ready. Ready.
You heard?
Yes.
Oh.
I was like, oh. So I have to get in. If I didn't get in,
Where did you hear this from?
It's all on Thunderbolts fandom, baby. That's
Sources?
where I'm following. The sources, the Thunderbolts source. So I'm like, I'll eat my words. If he didn't show up and there was no Thunderbolts, I'll be like, damn, we gotta cut that from the pod. But yeah, so that's apparently happening, which would bring more content for the Hall H panel. Among the rest of phase 5?
Yes.
5 and 6, maybe? Yes. To which I know I shared with you, that supposedly they will have announced and confirmed who the X-Men are going to be at this point. But, again.
Yeah, that's going to be a big day.
Big day. Hopefully
I will be keeping up.
Yes. So if you're listening to this first thing, hopefully we're in for good stuff later tonight, or we'll be talking about them next on the pod.
Yep.
So that all excitement aside, we can get into today's episode. But first, a reminder, we are not experts. We don't claim to be. We're just a couple of nerds nerding out. And in this episode, oh dear friends, we're going to nerd out all about Nathan Summers, a.k.a. Cable.
Strap in, ladies.
Cool.
I
Cable.
don't know. It sounded cooler
it's
in my
fine.
head.
It sounds cool. It's cool. So, Nathan Summers, created by Chris Claremont and Rick Leonardi, and Cable, Louise Simonson and Rob Liefeld. So, this is a complicated character, not only because of his origin, but also he has two separate origin stories per se. And so, given he has 4 creators, again, these are 2 very different eras. Nathan Summers, we're going to talk about, is basically the child. Cable comes in much later. He is the future version of this child. And so, as far as first appearances go, Nathan Summers debuted in The Uncanny X-Men number 201, which was cover dated January 1986. The title was Duel. Whereas Cable was, he first appeared in the New Mutants number 87, cover dated March 1990, titled A Show of Power. And so for this episode, we're going to go ahead and talk about Cable's first appearance specifically, especially when it comes to the costs and all that good stuff. So, Jeff, do you want to give a guess for this beautiful New Mutants cover.
1990.
1990, regular, no major 68 pages like our last one.
Okay.
So this one's just a regular old issue, 1990.
$1.25.
Jeff.
$1.50.
Jeff.
Dude, I was born in 94.
If you had said your answer from the last episode,
Oh, because I said a buck.
you said a buck. This comic was $1 when it came out.
These damn decades, man. All these different editions, special
Yup.
versions,
Yup.
the variants.
Exactly right. So currently, you could get the CGC 9.6 edition of this comic book for a cool $215 on Shortbox, whereas on eBay, a CGC 9.4, for whatever reason, is going for $4,500. Okay, so this is the first time we've actually encountered a graded comic that is marked Mark Jewels insert. And so this is a whole other subset of rare comics. It's essentially just that. There was this advertisement from Mark Jewelers. Imagine like the Jared's Jewelry or... Yeah, the name resonates.
Jared's.
or any jewelry store you can imagine. And they quite literally had an insert inside the middle of the comic, which was their catalog. So the $4,500 version, even though it's a lower grade, had this insane insert in it. And it was very rare because it was generally something that was inserted into editions that were sold on military grounds. So they got a different version of the print for whatever reason. Maybe they wanted to, if you want to gift your wife back at home, I don't know what the ploy was, but it was, it was generally a military circulated edition in the US and overseas. And then it was just so much more rare. So yeah, if you find you one of those, I guess it makes it it's worth so much more money than you would imagine. As for the lowest grade, CGC 9.2 on Shortbox is going for $40.
Nice.
Not bad. Yeah. And then an 8.5 on eBay is going for $50. So if you love Cable, you want this book, you could find a pretty good deal no matter where you go. Don't let people double down on the price because the fair market value for this book ranges around $450 to $550. But if you find a good price, hey man, you can get it. And then you can get the issue on its own, not graded, for about $20. And so, what was your first exposure to this character? Very curious.
It has to be, again, Deadpool.
Yeah.
It has to be.
Interesting. So,
It has to be.
So did you have any idea of what they possibly could have been alluding to?
I mean, I had Cable growing up. That's about it.
It's not the same. Oh my God, I should have absolutely expected that joke.
I was privileged in that way.
Yeah.
I can't
Interesting.
even, I can't even like put like a name to it, a visual to it.
He was just a dude from the future that came into the movie to you.
To me, yes.
Yeah.
Because the first Deadpool, like the end credits, right?
Yeah,
the post-credit scene where he's like, what do you, when he did the Ferris Bueller's Day Off reference,
Yeah.
he was like, get out of here. He's like, you know what I can tell you? In the second one, we're gonna have Cable.
Yeah.
And I was like, ooh. And I was like, I don't know if I know who that is.
Yeah, you're like, I didn't get this
So
reference.
I'm pretty sure I went home and Googled it.
Oh, interesting.
And then that's how and then Deadpool 2 started filming. You get like concept art leaks or whatever it is. You're like, oh, okay, you just know Josh Brolin's playing it. And you're like, and this is like, oh, he's playing that and he's Thanos too. You're like, oh my God, okay.
Yeah.
And then yeah.
Interesting.
So I'm pretty sure.
Wild.
What about you?
I want to say it's X-Men animated series, but I know that might be half true because he was in continuity while I got into comics. So he was around. And so I kind of got a really good idea of who he was because he jumped into the X-Men series when I was reading it. And then of course, in addition to that, the trading cards, because, again, I'm buying these packs. I'm like, who is this guy? Turn it over, read all about it. Oh, got it. And then he came into the video games, and I was like, I know that guy. And so he'd always kind of been there by association alone. So I guess I've been into the Cable knowledge for a while, but even now with everything I know, it's like there's still not. I don't know everything. I'm not even close to knowing everything about this kid because it's so complex.
Well, I mean, like when I watched the X-Men '97 series, and I was like, oh, he's the kid of Scott and Jean Grey. I was like, oh, or not Jean Grey. I'm sorry. Oops. Crucify me.
Well, technically,
Scott
you're
needs
not wrong.
I was like, oh, this is a big player in the universe type of thing. So like when I think back of like Deadpool 1, it's just, you're just a dude that came from the future, or like who can time travel essentially. But I would have never guessed like, oh, your dad's Cyclops.
Yeah, exactly. Which again, as we go along here, the more we dig up about this family, let alone Nathan and his parentage, the more you're going to be like, wow, they really nerfed Scott Summers in the movies. They really nerfed him down. But first, let's go to our handy dandy Marvel mini book about Cable. So for your enjoyment, Nathan Christopher Charles Summers, height 6'8", weight 350 pounds. And his bio reads, traveling to the past to prevent his own apocalypse-ruled future, Nathan Summers, son of Cyclops and Madelyne Pryor, a clone of Jean Grey, became a living paradox by negating his own eventual birth. A man out of time, Cable remains in the present, battling for the destiny of his fellow mutants.
Whoa.
Yeah. That's a lot.
It's kind of deep.
I mean, it's probably the most concise thing you're ever going to read about him.
Man from the future goes to the past.
Yes.
To preserve his present.
Yeah. Yeah, pretty much. Back to the future.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a whirlwind, so we're going to dive right in. So again, this is undeniably a tricky one, considering we haven't even spoken about his parents yet. So bear with me as we navigate this terrain. But the best representation of this character in pop culture has undoubtedly been through animation, not only with X-Men the Animated Series, but also X-Men '97. So it is a pretty good balance. Cable makes quite a few appearances over the span of 5 seasons in an animated series, because they do, once again, they go through Days of the Future Past and, all these episodes that they kind of refer to in X-Men '97, but they do expand it even further because, as we'll talk about, they never confirmed in X-Men the Animated Series who his parents were. They just implied that Jean read his mind and she was like, oh, you're important. And he just didn't want to talk about it. He's like, well, I don't want to talk about this right now.
He's like, quit it.
Yeah, he's like, you're not my mom. and so Scott goes the entire animated series. This is so funny.
Stop,
I love this.
you're not her. I can't get that laugh. That's so funny. Stop acting like you're my mom.
When he first said it, I was like, oh, Cable. Yeah, so Scott goes that entire animated series not knowing that Cable is his actual son. And so it's not until X-Men '97 we see that. But before we get too far in the weeds, let's take it back a little bit further to the quote unquote beginning. And so the big reveal happens in the pages of X-Men and Alpha Flight #2, which was published in 1986. And so you got to remember that this all takes place after the Phoenix Saga. So Jean Grey has died. She is no longer of this world. Scott Summers is grieving hard because this is the woman he's loved since he was a teenager.
Yes.
And so the X-Men have been a thing for years now. And so it's like, quote unquote, 20 years, which would equivalent to 4 or 5 years in their lifetime.
Yeah.
And so he's in his early 20s and he decides, like, there's this thing about Cyclops where he always runs away and he goes to his comfort zone, which happens to be Alaska because that's where he was raised.
Got it.
So Scott retreats to Alaska. I can't do this. Jean is gone.
Jean.
JJ Jonas and who? This is all about Scott Summers. Jean.
I can't do this anymore.
So he has retreated to Alaska, and his grandparents, I believe, were taking a charter plane in, and their pilot looks shockingly similar to Jean Grey, and she introduces herself as Madelyne Pryor. And so he meets her, and he's like, oh, hello, nice to meet you. And immediately he's like, oh my God, she looks just like Jean. You know? And so fast forward a bit, the two date, they get married. And now in this part of the story, Professor X has found the couple who are, you know, they're off world. They're doing this. It's very complex. I'm not even going to get into it. And he's telepathically combing both of their minds to ensure that they are who they are. They're authentically them.
Yeah.
And he stops. Professor X stops in the middle of it, and he's like, oh, it seems that you're both fine, but I'm not just reading 2 signatures, but I'm reading 3. And Scott's like, What? Yeah. And then Madelyne's just blushing, and that's when they find out, oh, they're with child. And so Maddie obviously knew, she just hadn't told Scott yet. And so we've then fast forward to Uncanny X-Men number 201. And this is so crazy because between those 2 time frames, Scott and Madelyne's relationship starts to crumble more and more each day. Each day, it's getting weaker and weaker. He's more lost in his own mind and mourning Jean. He still cannot get over her. Even though there's a carbon copy of her running around, he's still like, I wish I could have saved her. Oh, I wish she hadn't died. And it's like, you have a wife who is about to pop out a baby. Yeah. And you're still like, I can't do this. And he constantly leaves her hanging. Constantly. She's like, but Scott, I need you here. I can't do this.
I'm still grieving Jean.
You baby. And so at this point, the X-Men are currently in Paris for the trial of Magneto. So the cover for one of these issues looks very familiar. I think I showed it to you before. It's when Magneto was in the shackles and he's wearing that suit that he has in X-Men 97. It's the purple and the white with the M on it.
Yeah.
So this is actually part of the story. So Bo DeMeo and all the lovely people that worked on X-Men 97 are pulling from this exact storyline in the comics. And so that, you know, the events occur in a similar timeline as the, you know, with some modifications. So like in X-Men 97, the X-Men are posted up around this perimeter as the trial is happening. Magneto's in that I don't know what it was, a courtroom or government building. Looks exactly the same, by the way. It's exactly the same. They modeled it from the comics. And so as the trial goes underway, bombs start ringing out and the X-Men are springing into action. And of course, we should remember that in the comics, Jean perished after the events of the Phoenix Saga. So we were then later introduced to Madelyne, and then all, as I just mentioned, marriage, pregnant, and then the storyline at this point, they've been married for a year.
Got it.
Dude's been married for a year and it's already going to like complete shit.
Yep, sounds about right.
Yeah. And so while the X-Men are fighting and Magneto is under trial and all this stuff, Madelyne is back in the mansion in New York, like 8 months pregnant by herself, for the record. And she's wondering how the X-Men have been. And so the thing is that, again, Scott is lost in his mind. He's looking for distractions. He's also the leader of the team. And he is essentially at this point trying to do anything he can possibly muster to not be home while his wife is pregnant. And so she has this whole narration in her head. She's like, I've heard from Storm, I've heard from Kitty. They've all called me every day, but I haven't heard from Scott for weeks. Huh. And you're just like, what is wrong with this guy? And so it's really weird because characters pop in at random. And in this particular issue, she's then visited by Corsair, who is Cyclops' father, and Lilandra. And then at the same time, while all this is going on, Professor X even though he at this point had already died in X-Men 97, he is dying in the comics. So Lilandra comes to Earth with Corsair because he's a Starjammer. We've talked about him a little bit.
Yeah.
He's very Guardians of the Galaxy-ish. He and Lilandra come and they're like, where's the professor? We heard that he is not well. And Madelyne's like, he's in Paris with the X-Men. And so they're like, well, and they peace out and leave her. They bail and they go to find Charles. And so she's like, okay. And then she realizes that she's getting contractions by herself. And then she then delivers Nathan on the kitchen floor by herself before going to the hospital. So then we fast forward a little bit more after the battle happens and Magneto and Professor X and all that stuff. And then we arrive to the issue itself, which is Nathan's first appearance. And baby Nathan has arrived and everybody is so stoked. And you see this battle and all the X-Men are smiling and they're so happy. And then you see Scott on the bottom of the corner and he's just like, he's looking away.
Wow.
Not happy. He's just like, I can't do this. I can't do this right now. I should be happy my son is here, but I'm not happy because Jean is dead. And you're just like, God, like, what's wrong with you?
Damn,
It's so insane. And now I'm realizing like, this is why people are like, Scott Summers sucks. Because of all of this, and he's just not happy. So while it's already pretty on point, in his defense, Professor X did die in Paris, quote unquote, died. He died in Paris. So that's even more insult to injury for Scott, who has now lost Jean, lost Professor Xavier.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, it's very much like the first episode of X-97 where Magneto comes in and he's like, Charles told me to come lead your team. And he's like, why wasn't I good enough?
Yeah, because now I know why. Damn.
Yeah, so he's got all these things coming down on him. It's not justification. I get it, but also it's like, man up, Scott Summers.
Can't even lead your family. You know what I'm saying?
It's true. Oh my God, amazing. And so Scott continues his woe is me. Why isn't he here? Why didn't he make me the leader? And so the discussions with Maddie are very similar. Scott says he can't leave despite the baby. And then, once again, he's like, let's go back to Alaska. And so that they made a home there. And that, again, that's where Scott was raised. That's his birthplace. And so he wanted to do that. But he can't allow himself. He's like, no, I have to stay here.
Yes.
And I have to watch Magneto because I don't trust him. And it's like,
should also watch your kid. No, sir.
So because of this, because there is obvious hesitation for him to just leave and be a family man, Storm then intervenes. She's not even powered. So similarly to X-97, she didn't completely leave at this point in the comics. She's present at the X-Mansion, Mohawk and all, and she's like, I do not have any powers, but how about we have a duel?
Yeah.
And whoever wins will lead the X-Men. And Scott is like, okay, I'll take it easy. I'll use my powers at a minimum. And she's like, great. They have the duel. Scott still loses.
Yeah.
Still loses.
Yep.
No powers.
Yep.
And she still whooped him.
Get his ass.
And so, as agreed, he just takes to his like, all right, I lost. I'll go to Anchorage. And he leaves. He takes the family and leaves. And so this, if you can believe it, this is the part where shit finally starts to go down. So not only, again, is Scott and Madelyne's marriage crumbling by the second, but then he leaves Madelyne high and dry. So they've had the baby. She's like, oh, it's so messed up when you read the issue. She's like,
Then we're still talking about Nathan here? That's
and we're
crazy,
still talking about
bro.
Nathan. I know. And Nathan at this point
I
is...
might just hate Scott by the end of this episode.
I'm so sorry. I know, I'm starting to wonder, like, why do I like him? He's so problematic. The beginning of this issue is is crazy because he's so not there. He's looking out the window. He's won't make eye contact with her ever. And she's just being a normal person.
Sure.
Right? And so she has the baby. Oh, Nathan needs a new diaper. Scott, can you get a diaper? And he's like, yeah, sure. And then she's getting him ready, and he's just like, I just can't get over it. And he's like, he won't let it go. And then she's like,
but Madelyne, Jean.
Exactly. It's so insane to me. And then Maddie is like, she's not only comforting him, but then she's like reminding him, she's like, Scott, I understand. And she's like, Scott. And he's like, yeah. And she's like, the diaper? And he's like, oh yeah, sure. The phone rings. He's like, oh, I better go get the phone. And she's like,
the diaper.
Yes.
And he's like, Jean.
Exactly. Oh my God. And so at this point, he answers the phone. It's Warren Worthington. It's Angel calling from New York. And he's like, Scott, I need you to get back to New York as soon as possible. And he's like, what is it? And he's like, I can't tell you. You have to come here. And he's like, all right. And then Madelyne is so fed up, rightfully so. She's like, Scott, if you walk out that door, don't bother coming back. And he's like, I can't, I have to, what am I doing? I should be a good father and I should stay here with my wife and my baby. What does Scott Summers do, Jeff?
He walks out that door because he said, Jean.
Exactly. So he gets back to New York. This man, you know who walks in the room? You know, I wish everybody could see your reaction. This is so good. I'm living. He walks into the room and he's like, Warren, what is so important that you had to have me come back from Anchorage? And he's like, well, Scott, I'll let you see for yourself. And here she comes, Scott.
Jean.
Jean Grey has risen from the dead. Oh. She's back. She came back. So it's this huge thing. I don't want to get into it. Phoenix put her at the end of the Jamaican Ocean. She was in a cocoon, and then Phoenix had made a copy of her body. That's what died. Real Jean, was under the ocean the entire time. She comes back up. She's rejuvenated. She's like, "Hi there, Tiger." Very Mary Jane like. Very Mary Jane like. And so she's good. She's good. And he's like, oh,
great. Now I have two Jeans.
Exactly. And he's freaking out. And I'm just like, rereading this, I was like, my guy, my king, what are you doing? What are you doing? And he's just like, I'm so happy. Jean is back. I can finally, oh wait, Madelyne, Nathan, what do I do? And you're just like, you punk. And so, meanwhile, he's all off happy. They go off, they make a new team. He forgets all about Madelyne.
Dude.
Does not go back to Anchorage. She's like, Jean's back. I'm staying here. We're going to make a new team. We're X Factor now. Told you X Factor was going to come up through the woodwork.
Yeah.
So meanwhile, in Anchorage, the Marauders, we've talked about the Marauders a teeny tiny bit. They go to Anchorage. They attempt to kill Madelyne. They leave her for dead, then steal her baby. And then they give him to Mr. Sinister. And so Mr. Sinister then raises him in the same foster home that he raised Scott Summers, or where Scott Summers was raised in.
Yeah.
And so much of this has been adapted into X-Men 97.
Yeah, I mean, I see the similarities. Yeah,
100%. So Mr. Sinister starts experimenting on Nathan. But the major difference here is that Apocalypse steps into the comics. And he and Mr. Sinister are all about getting on top of the genetic totem pole, right? They love DNA. They love the whole, like, mutants are superior. Let's do what we can to preserve this. And so Apocalypse then takes the child and experiments on the child as well. And so Apocalypse is the one who, unfortunately, then infects Nathan with the techno-organic virus, which then begins to spread along his body, as we see in the cartoon. And then Sister Ascani, who we'll talk about later, visits from the distant future, pops in. She tells Scott that, hey, I can save your baby's life, but I'm going to have to take him with me and I can't come back.
Yeah.
It's the same thing that Cable kind of says in the Deadpool 2 movie, where he's like, I only have two charges, one to get me here and one to take me home.
Yeah.
And so it's essentially what Sister Ascani does. And so in a final effort to do right by his son, Scott is like, what I can do for him is let him go. And then he lets him go. He lets him go a little more dramatically than he does in the show. But it's right there, tonally, it's right there. And so after all is said and done, we first see adult Nathan, who is now returned from the future as Cable in the New Mutants number 87, having tracked down this group called the Mutant Liberation Front on a mission, who are sent and associated with a villain named Strife, who we'll get into at the end of this episode. And so if you hadn't guessed by now, Nathan has an absolutely dense history, some of which we'll talk about through this episode. But nevertheless, Nathan Summers' Cable, portrayed by Josh Brolin in 2018's Deadpool 2. And a special shout out to my man, Chris Potter, voice of Cable in X-Men 97. So yeah, in live action, Cable is a survivor of a distant dystopian future who makes a decision to return to present day with the goal of finding a future annihilator, and then he encounters Wade as a result, and by proxy, the rest of his newly assembled X-Force team includes Domino, Bedlam, Shatterstar, Zeitgeist, Pete, Wisdom, and Vanisher, as well as X-Men, Colossus, Negasonic, and Yukio. So, yeah. Imagine if they had even tried to adapt.
I mean, yeah, I was going to say, like,
all of that.
That was a roller coaster. I'm actually exhausted.
Isn't that crazy?
I was trying to imagine everything as you were saying it.
Yes.
And I'm just like, this guy's life sucks.
It's insane. Yeah, and all he is just a wee little baby. So very quickly, this is the moment that the X Factor find him, and he is infected with the virus. So he's a wee bit bigger.
Yeah. Than in the show.
In the show, he was like straight up a baby. And in the comics, he's kind of like a 2-year-old, I want to say, ish. There's so much that happens. I squished it down to a very bite-sized version of it.
Well, I get it now. If when they said there's going to be Cable in Deadpool 2, I see the valid questions of like, oh, is Cyclops going to be in the movie, or is Jean Grey going to be in the movie?
Yeah.
So
exactly.
Yeah. Like, no, they didn't even like show him as a kid in the movie.
Not even a flicker.
Just him straight as Cable.
And I think that given the circumstances and given like how many minutes we just spoke about him in the comics, the approach they took with Cable in the film was pretty ingenious, because they just made it as simplified as humanly possible. He is from the future. There was something apocalyptic that happened. It was dystopian. He lost his family, and now he's trying to stop that from happening.
Yeah.
Easy peasy. Easy peasy. So how do you feel about Josh Brolin? Now that you've been exposed to all these different versions of Cable, sort of, like with the animated version and then a little bit of the comic, and now based off of Josh, how do you feel about this character?
I think he, in my opinion, nails it. Like, he has like
I think he's great.
He has like that hoarse voice, deep, like bravado voice.
Yes, I was gonna say bravado. He's a bravado.
It's like, and it's just like this one like character like type like voice. Yeah. Never too high, never too low. Yeah. Just
centralized. He's fixed into a position.
Like, no. Like, why would I?
And also, Josh Brolin is incredible voice.
Yeah.
So distinct.
That man is Thanos. Yeah.
And it's wild, because I did rewatch this entire film. I rewatched Deadpool 2 entirely, because I was like, oh, I might as well. I need to prime for Deadpool Wolverine. And so thinking about how Josh Brolin speaks in general, and then also how his performance as Thanos versus his performance as Cable. Yeah. They're similar as much as they're very much not. Like, they're both very deep and guttural almost, but there is something to Thanos that is just unhinged enough. Yeah. And so wise that Cable doesn't have. Cable's a little more loose, a little bit more, more, I don't know what the word is. He's just got a little more to his voice that's not as taut. He's more slack than Thanos, obviously. Mm-hmm. But my God, it's a performance in itself, because he's very just, no, I hate you. Like, he's very, very of the character. And so when it comes to aesthetics, so I have this wonderful 2-panel picture of Josh Brolin versus his comic book counterpart. And of course, the first thing you see is this, like, the size difference. which they joked about in the film itself. And I forgot what the line was, but Deadpool says something like, yeah, he's like 5 foot. He's 5'11". It's totally not accurate compared to his comic book version, but we won't talk about that. And I was like, oh my God. And it's a very fourth wall thing of Cable to do because, of Deadpool to do because Cable is supposed to be this hulking 6 foot, what did I say, 8 or whatever it was, 6'5" man at 350, he's supposed to be. And so they like kind of give a nod to the semi-short king by just being like, he's not fully accurate, but also we have a 6'3" Wolverine. So
true.
It's okay. But when it comes to his general look, Cable's got a few distinct notes of importance. When it comes to his aesthetic, he's got big guns, bandoliers, ammo, prosthetic arm, and a glowy eye. All of which are carried over between comic to live action pretty damn well, if you ask me. So Josh Brolin's version of the character came from a truly abysmal future, of course, reflected in the attire. And then, you can see like he's definitely got like it's very browns, earthy tones. What would you call it? Tactical.
Yeah.
Tactical. Because there is no X-Men at this point of the Deadpool franchise. So I think given the circumstances, they did pretty well. Whereas the comics and the animated versions have a more vibrant palette to him, and he tends to don X-Men colors and the insignia. And of course, shout out to costume designers Kurt Swanson and Bart Mueller for their work on Deadpool 2, bringing Cable to life. And the arm I thought was pretty cool because they, as Deadpool said, he's like, "Who is the grandpa with the Winter Soldier arm?" Which is great. And I don't know have you seen the behind the scenes making of this film?
Oh my gosh, I don't know if I have.
Really? Yeah, I think
maybe.
Is
it on YouTube? I mean, I don't know.
I had the Blu-ray, so.
Oh yeah. So
but
I don't know. Maybe
you see Josh Brolin with the green glove.
Ooh.
And they're just.
Oh yeah, I've seen that. Yes.
Yeah. It's cool. So, powers and paraphernalia. This is probably the second longest portion of this entire show, aside his origin story. So, I didn't want to skimp on this because you have to remember this child comes from two incredibly powerful parents. Granted, Madelyne is an imperfect clone of Jean Grey. However, the DNA is still there, right?
Yes.
So, according to Marvel.com, Cable has both telepathic and telekinetic abilities. In other words, he can read minds and move objects by simply using his mind. He can also manipulate the thoughts and the bodily functions of others, even from vast different distances. If he chooses, he has the ability to disassemble objects or form defensive force fields. However, Cable has had to use his telekinetic powers on a regular basis to prevent the techno-organic virus from infecting the rest of his body. Since being cured, he has been able to refocus his powers accordingly. So, the original premise, because they have to give a hero, even one that's kind of gray, like Cable is, they have to give him some purpose. So, they never absolved him of the virus entirely. So it was just kind of like, oh, he's so powerful that he has to use his own telekinesis to literally
stop it.
Yeah, which is kind of phenomenal in its own way. And so after the fact, later on in his origin, he is then cured of the virus, and then it essentially unlocks his Omega potential. So he's truly like his parents' child. Like
he's a threat, Omega level threat.
Completely formidable mutant because he is not only so. Yeah, I know. Jeff shook his head like, damn. He's not only capable of battle hand-to-hand combat, but he's also a telekinetic and a telepath. And so he is an alpha, by technicality, he's an alpha level mutant with Omega potential, perhaps more concisely, an alpha level telepath and an alpha level and Omega level telekinetic. So he's better at moving things than he is manipulating somebody's mind. But damn, if he has both on you,
I know,
it's over. It's just over. And so with his telepathy also comes psychometry, illusions, telepathic cloak, mind link, telepathic camouflage, mind control, mind trap, mind possession, mind alteration, mental amnesia, precognition, psionic shields and blasts, astral projection, as well as a mental detection. You walk into the house from the other side of it, he's like, Geoffrey's here. So you can't even sneak up on the bro. He knows everything. And so with his telekinesis also comes technoactive manipulation. This is what's used to keep the virus at bay. Intuitive aptitude, which is he can disassemble and reassemble stuff, no problem. And we see this in the movie when he's putting his gun together and he's putting all the dials and all this stuff. So he can just do it very intuitively. Matter transmutation, psionic spikes, size increase, regeneration and healing, force field concussive blasts, like his father, tactile telekinesis, flight, teleportation, and time traveling. And so it's like he has all of their abilities just smashed together in this wonderful patty of a mutant, and they come out in different ways. So his powers aren't too spec of his mother and father, but they're very close in their own way. And so with his techno-organic physiology, he also has superhuman endurance, speed, agility, and dexterity, along with a cybernetic eye and arm and restoration. So, yeah, our boy's loaded. He's just not OP, but he's heavily artillery. Like, holy crap.
I know.
And so we didn't get a lick of any of that information when it came to Deadpool 2 version of Cable. But he's pretty much noted as just being a telepath with telekinesis and super strength. But you kind of get the idea, like, oh, he can do stuff.
Yeah. That's about it.
Yeah, right. Okay. So, Jeff, pop quiz.
No.
It's easy. It's a true or false. It's a true or false. So you have 50
I'm going to get it wrong.
50% chance. 50% chance.
50% chance of
Yes.
getting it wrong.
Okay. So, pop quiz.
Yes.
While Wade Wilson affectionately named his swords Bee and Arthur after the iconic Golden Girls actress and comedian in the MCU, comic book Cable referred to and labeled one of his primary guns, the Ouchmaker. True or false?
The what?
Ouchmaker. Ouchmaker. True or false?
That doesn't sound very Omega level threatening. You said this is a version. This is like he gave this gun like this nickname.
Is that true or false?
I really want to say that's the Ouchmaker.
The Ouchmaker.
What are you, 5?
I mean,
might as well call it the Boo Boo Giver.
that'd be kind of amazing. Just saying, this was the 90s. They had a character named Boom Boom.
Did he? Oh, now I gotta deduce.
Okay.
Did he use it like as like a saying, like an exclamation?
I wouldn't say he used the phrase. Did he just label his gun?
He labeled like, oh, this is the Ouchmaker.
Yeah, I don't know that he would. I don't think if he were to do such a thing for Cable.
You just asked for the Ouchmaker.
That would be, see that? Even I would be like,
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, that's fair. That's fair.
This is a good old Ouchmaker. Yeah, it doesn't. I don't know.
It doesn't have the.
But it's the 90s. They're
capiche.
corny as hell.
Yeah, there's also that, which is why it's a nice little pop quiz. True or false?
My gut says false. I'm going false because that's preposterous. Damn it!
It's true.
It's so lame.
But he never says it. He never says it.
He just
has the gun that he pulls out in this issue. I believe it's I think it's X-Force. I want to say, I don't know. I don't remember which one. But it is a story written by Fabian Nicesa and Greg Capullo. And indeed, his gun has Ouchmaker written on the side. I don't know why they would do that.
The audacity.
So unserious. So unserious. Unfortunately, that is very true. So as we move on, Family, friends, and affiliations. So this absolutely goes without saying. All of the characters we're going to talk about here can and likely will have their own standalone episodes. So we're not, I repeat, we are not going to get too deep in the weeds here.
We would be here for a day.
We would literally be here until Comic-Con, through Comic-Con, after Comic-Con. So first up to the plate is our friend Scott Summers. Cyclops.
Deadbeat dad. Next. I was kidding.
I mean, yeah, that's kind of accurate, sadly. So, we're going to talk about Scott sooner than later. So I'm going to try to make this short. So best spoken by Maddie herself. Oh gosh, do I still have the panel? I had it. Oh, here it is. So this panel sums up Scott Summers entirely. This is Madelyne Pryor. Baby, I love your father dearly, but sometimes he can be a real jerk. Yeah, that's accurate. He's a jerk. And so if you don't know who Cyclops is by now, for the love of God, would you please watch X-Men, the animated series, or X-Men 97? And again, we talked about Scott above. These two have a ridiculous, tumultuous origin story. But in the end of it all, Scott mostly meant well by his son and made up for it in a mini-series called Cyclops and Phoenix, which takes place immediately after Scott and Jean get married. And they were supposed to be on their honeymoon. And so this story is particularly interesting because they have taken leave from the X-Men just for a while to have this honeymoon that they very much deserved after everything that has gone on. And at that point, I think X-Men had been out for 30 years. So 30 years in, and they finally get married in continuity. And so they go off onto this honeymoon. They get transported off Earth into the future, and then they're delivered to their future son. Like in X-Men 97.
Yes.
That's stripped from Cyclops and Phoenix.
Wow.
And so they met adolescent Nathan there, and then they raise him under these aliases Slim with a Y and Red with 2 Ds, Dayspring.
Did you say Slim with a Y?
Yeah.
S-L-Y-M. Okay.
S-L-Y-M.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was like, what?
Yeah, no, Scott's nickname in comics is Slim Summers. Because when he was younger, he was like as straight as a pencil. He was slim. He wasn't really muscular.
Could also be pronounced slime because he's a slimy dad.
Oh, shucks. Yeah. He was a little man, and then he grew to be clearly who we now see him as, the leader that we see him as. So yeah, he used to be slim, and then Jean is Red. So, which is funny because Logan, those are his nicknames for them, are Slim and Red, just spelled normally.
Beat it, Red.
Yeah, you would never tell her to do that. Beat
me, Red.
That's accurate. So yeah, we're not going to talk too much about Scott and Cyclops particularly, but God knows he tried to be there for his son. In the end, he was there for him. It's still a little weird, but given everything that this family has gone through, can you really blame them? So Scott Summers in the cinematic universe, first portrayed by James Marsden, followed by Tim Pocock in X-Men Origin Wolverine. Nobody remembers that Scott Summers was in that film, I promise you. And then most recently by Ty Sheridan in the new era of X-Men films. But yeah, these two have zero crossover whatsoever. There's not even a nugget of, hey, your future child, nothing at all. But again, we get an abundance of them in X-Men 97. So please, if you're the least bit interested and have not watched X-Men 97, for the love of God, just do it already. It's really great. That brings us to Madelyne Pryor, who I refused to write more than a paragraph about because Maddie deserves her own episode for a multitude of reasons. So we're not going to do that here. But just know that everything that happened up top, holy cannoli, that's just the surface when it comes to Maddie. Mm-hmm. It's kind of wild. So, Madelyne Pryor, however, has no cinematic counterpart, but she is voiced in X-Men 97 by Jennifer Hale. Amazing. I can't tell you enough how, and I mentioned it in another episode, I quite literally have waited for Madelyne Pryor to be in pop culture beyond the comics since I was like 10. Because I was like, she's so cool, but she's like demonic.
Yeah.
But I loved her because she was just so... I don't even know what the word is for her. So much chaos, so much pain too, which is just really unfortunate because like we mentioned above, like he was straight up not there for her.
Yeah.
He'd leave her at the drop of a dime. The poor woman goes through
a lot.
So much. She is found dead, not like pretty much near death, back up floating in a river is when they had first found her. She had been mind wiped. She didn't know who she was anymore. She had no consciousness after a while because Mr. Sinister messed with her so bad. And so that's in the comics. That's kind of where she starts to roam around and she's like, oh, I don't know my name anymore. And then she starts to slip further into the dark recesses of her mind. And that's how the Goblin Queen starts to emerge. And so she makes this pact with a demon and it just, it all goes south real quick. And so, again, I don't expect to see her in cinematic continuity whatsoever.
Well, I was going to ask you, I was like off the top of your head real quick, who do you think could play her right now in like in the grand scheme of actors right now that we have, like in recent years, whether it's like actresses in the last 3-5 years or who you think is on the rise. So who do you think could play off the top of your head? At least maybe they haven't came up yet.
Yeah.
But if you were to pick someone right now to cast someone to play Madelyne Pryor / Jean Grey.
Oh my God. I don't know. That's really, really hard because I liked the girl from House on Haunted Hill and You. What is her name? I can't remember her name off the top of my head. But she played Love Quinn. So Victoria
Pedretti?
Yes.
Oh.
I think she has the acting chops, but I don't see her visually.
Why? Because she played a crazy girl in
yes.
You?
I loved her in You. I
like that is the definition
so
of matching someone's freak.
Yes, it is. I love You, by the way. I love that show so much, and I thought she was so good because I was like, how is anyone going to make Penn Badgley look crazy?
Like, do you know how crazy you have
it.
to? Do you know how crazy you have to look to have Penn Badgley's characters scared?
That's what I'm saying. I was like, she brought it. She really brought it. And in House on the Haunting Hill, she was also incredible because she's very good at conveying distress and panic and stuff.
And that's all she.
Scott! That's all she does. I don't know, but I couldn't see her visually as Jean.
Like in red. In
as a
red.
redhead with green eyes, if they were to go that route. But even visually, Jean herself, she's supposed to be girl next door looking.
Yeah.
But there's a certain grace and intelligence about her that you're kind of like, damn, okay, shoot, okay.
Sorry, don't want to mess with you.
I don't want to. Yeah, exactly, because she's formidable at the end, despite how they represented her, for years being the Scott. She's also incredibly formidable. She's a cosmic being at this point.
Yeah,
she has the Phoenix Force. So, like Sophie Turner looked great, but she didn't, in my opinion, did not have the Jean Grey aura that we needed. Even Famke Janssen, I liked Famke Janssen a lot, but for me, she had just missed the mark. She wasn't quite there. So I don't know.
It's a tough role.
It's a tough one.
It's a tough role.
Like, so if rumors are true and we have at this point in time learned who Jean Grey will be or have not, and in the future, I still wouldn't. It's going to take a bit to really like...
It's going to be Scarlett Johansson.
Oh my God, can you imagine? I would
be crazy.
I would spontaneously human combust. I'd be like, what is happening? Which, by the way, she's now officially infiltrated my other favorite franchise. So she's in Jurassic World 4 now.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay. I'm excited because I do love her in some ways. She's fine. She's great.
Yeah.
But I love Jurassic World, and I'm like, yeah, sure. I'm excited that she's excited.
Yeah.
But I'm like,
it's so funny.
You're here. You're
so
here too.
Funny.
Got it. So yeah, no, we need to find somebody fresh or somebody who has not been used to that.
Yeah, it's got to be like
level.
this needle in a haystack type thing.
It really does.
That no one has, discovered or at least broken big.
Yeah. So, whether or not we see more of Madelyne, I don't know really. I mean, even in X-Men 97, I mean, there might be a point that we see the Genosha thing play out the way, quote unquote, Cable intended. Maybe he succeeds in saving his mother, but I highly doubt it. I think she's done and gone. So I don't know. I don't think I think she's too complex for cinematic, but Phoenix is not. So... as we've seen 3 times.
It's not even that. It's just like that's like a whole nother.
So yeah, it's a whole thing. Which, by the way, Phoenix #1, the new series is officially out. Go grab you a copy. I have a very good feeling that Jean is gonna officially move on from the X-Men in comics and become something. She ain't coming back. Like it's getting crazy over there in X-Men land. But yeah. So next up on the list, this one's a very new one for you, Jeff. I know we briefly talked about this when she made an appearance in X-Men 97, but Rachel Summers, a.k.a. Ascani, a.k.a. Phoenix. So Rachel, she is, as a character from a future, she is not the future. So this is an alternate timeline child scenario. Rachel's backstory is a bit more complicated than the norm. Long story short, she was the first and only child of Jean and Scott in another timeline, having inherited the Phoenix Force imbued power from her mother. So that's a whole new ballpark because you have Nathan on one end, who is the son of Madelyne Pryor, clone of Jean Grey and Scott Summers. Then you have Rachel, who's quite literally Scott and Jean's child, just of another universe.
They be making love in different universes, bro.
He loves her in every universe, Jeff.
I'm actually. I think I might put that line in my vows.
You have to. You have to.
I know.
If it's not that one, it has to be one from one to one.
Oh, don't worry. I got.
Don't disappoint us.
I got lines.
Yes!
It's gonna be corny as hell.
I need to hear it. So much of Nathan's birth story revolves around Rachel and her desire to be honest with Scott about her parentage. So similarly in the comics, Rachel came from the future. The X-Men welcomed her like, oh, this is a new mutant. She's welcomed in our home. She's one of us. And then of course people are like, hold on a second. Wait a minute. Where are you from? And she's like, nowhere. She tries to hide it. She doesn't. She's looking for the perfect opportunity to tell her parents like, hey, I'm your daughter. And she never does it. She's too scared. And so a lot of her, it's so funny because she has comparable anxiety to Cyclops.
Yeah.
In that Nathan is around, and so she's having all this anxiety of like, I thought I was the only child. How could he be the first child? But now Scott is worried about him, and I can't tell him that I'm his daughter. Yeah. And so she has this huge story where that's all she's doing for a number of the issues. And then, with especially with Madelyne. So imagine Madelyne, Nathan, that whole thing, Scott, that thing, and then you insert Rachel into the mix. It's a hullabaloo. And so she doesn't get a chance to tell him until 4 years after this is all happening in comic continuity. And so they finally have that. They have the resolve. They're like, okay, we're a family. And then in the distant future, however, she becomes Mother Ascani, who we're introduced to in X-Men 97, or simply Ascani, who is a time-displaced leader of a clan that worships the Messiah that Cable was supposed to become in their apocalypse-ruled future. Jeez. So he's not only now the child of Scott and Madelyne, he is also a Messiah that's gonna stop apocalypse, because he's ruled all of North America, or like half the world at this point. And so we're going to see that, or a version of it, in X-Men 97 very, very soon. Well, in the next year, easily. And so this clan forms, they're mutants, and they believe that he is basically going to absolve the world of this terror. He's the chosen one, Jeff.
This family.
I know. And so Rachel Summers, Ascani, she has no cinematic counterpart. However, she is voiced in X-Men 97 by Gates McFadden, who is a Star Trek celebrity. Yes, she is an icon of her own. And so Rachel appeared at the end of season 1 in her older form, known as Mother Ascani or simply Ascani. And there's no doubt that we'll see more of her in season 2. So yeah, that's going to be awesome. And I don't think the two have shared screen time otherwise. So, because they're not in cinematic continuity together. But even in X-Men, the animated series, I don't think they were ever on screen together. So X-Men 97 is the first time we're actually seeing them interact and everything. It's a whole new world, man. It's kind of wild. So we're gonna veer into more familiar territory now with Nina Thurman, aka Domino. So in the comics, between Domino and Cable, despite their tumultuous beginnings, Domino joined Cable's team called the Six Pack, which they then turned into the Wild Pack early on. And she was pretty much a formidable, resourceful mercenary for Cable's team. And she and Cable got along particularly well because they're both kind of rough around the edges, very tactile people. And she eventually becomes lieutenant of X-Force beside Cable. And she's also been a love interest on and off. And so and despite the fact I kept her in friends, family, and affiliations just because we could talk about her separately one day. And we do have a cinematic version to discuss anyway. So that's pretty much more or less their thing. Again, because they have so many teams at this point, X-Force, X-Factor, X-Men, Excalibur, we don't need to dive too deep into their lore, but she's a great side character in there too. And she carries her own really well in the comics. And of course, on screen, portrayed by Zazie Beetz, first seen in Deadpool 2, they haven't mentioned anything about her either, which I'm kind of disappointed. So if Zazie nor Josh are in 3, I'm gonna be kind of sad because they were really the goats of number 2.
Who did I see in there? Shatterstar was in there, I think, in that Deadpool 3 teaser.
Oh, is he?
I don't know. I forget who's in that when they're in the apartment scene or whatever.
Oh yeah. I think you're right. Well, I know that what's his name? Dopinder.
Dopinder, yes.
Dopinder's definitely there. And Pete is there.
Peter.
What's crazy is that we didn't talk about this. Not that we really had a lot of reason to, but Kitty Pryde, she has a Peter problem. She dates men that are named Peter. So she had a crush on Spider-Man. She dated Piotr, who's Peter Rasputin. Mm-hmm. She dated Peter Quill. And I believe she might be dating him now. She dated Pete Wisdom, a.k.a. Pete, from Deadpool.
That's funny.
Peter problem.
That's really funny.
It's so crazy. I don't know why they do this to her. But yeah, it's interesting. So if they're not in, I'll be kind of sad. I hope they have a teeny tiny cameo. I don't know. But so similarly to the comics, she's a probability altering mutant mercenary who joins X-Force. And the two cross over quite a bit. No choice of their own, and definitely they did not carry over the love interest facets this time around, because clearly Cable's goal and mission is to get revenge for his family.
Yes.
So they kept it neutral. I love that. Not every woman needs to be a vehicle for romantic interest.
I agree.
And then, of course, next on the friends list is Wade Wilson, Deadpool himself.
Deadpool.
So we're covering Wade very, very soon, actually, in the next 2 episodes, pretty much. But it goes without saying that these two are undeniably on again, off again adversaries in the comics, and we see quite a bit of that on screen. They have a pretty rich background. So no different than any X-Men on the same team. They're pretty much interwoven into each other's stories off and on. They have Cable and Deadpool. They have Cable standalone, Deadpool standalone, X-Force. And they're constantly bumping heads, the whole 9 yards. And they also have the same dad. aka Rob Liefeld. So that alone should give you a pretty good idea of what to expect from them when it comes to their slapstick and crude humor. But yeah, Wade Wilson, Deadpool, portrayed by Ryan Reynolds.
Oh, yeah.
Ah, what a goat. My God, he was born to play this role.
Oh, yeah.
We didn't talk about Deadpool directly in our Colossus episode because in comic continuity, they didn't have any connection aside, just the grand scheme of ensembles, if even that. And so, and also when it comes to Colossus, he's just at large, very much an X-Man. But it's a bit different when it comes to Cable because again, they have X-Force. So, these two have a lot in common. And again, they cross paths on screen when Cable tracks Rusty back to the mutant holding facility where he and Wade were collared and depowered. I forgot. It was funny because I remember not super duper loving the woe was me Wade Wilson that was introduced in Deadpool 2. Mm-hmm. But I'll be very honest, it's very accurate because the whole thing with Deadpool in the comics is that he is the way he is because he's dealing with dark depression. Like it's like any true comedian, right? They always say, and Robin Williams himself used to say all the time, is that the people who make people laugh the most are the ones who are most sad,
Yeah.
And so unfortunately that's the same for Wade. And so, when it comes to the cinematic version and how desperately Wade is trying to just die and he wants the cancer to like consume him and just off him so he can be with Vanessa is wild. And then here comes Cable and it kind of jump starts him back into having a purpose to live, because then it's when Cable comes in that Wade realizes, oh, the kid is the key to him being able to reconnect with Vanessa in the afterlife and all that. Because remember, she's like, your heart's not there yet or whatever.
You're not ready.
You're not ready. And so, thankfully the two inevitably team up and then Wade uses that good deed to try and get to his lady love.
We're definitely naming our kid Cher.
It's so funny. I was like, I liked it a lot more than I thought I did. Like, and I've rewatched it a couple of times ever since it came out too. But I still to this day, like, Cable and Domino are my goats out of that movie. I thought they were just so fantastic.
They did really well.
Like Zazie is just unbelievable. She's in it just enough that you're just like, I want to see her again.
Yeah.
But she doesn't overtake the film. You know what I mean? Not that she didn't have to, but damn, she was. And, not that we won't talk about this eventually, but man, I don't know if you remember the uproar that she wasn't comic accurate was so insane. Domino. Because in the comic, she's quite literally black and white. And so she's black hair, she's white. It's
like a domino piece.
She looks like, she's basically a human domino. And her patch, so to speak, is a black not birthmark, but she's got a black thing over her eye.
Yeah.
And so when Zazie Beetz came in with her beautiful hair and just looking like $1 million, I was like, damn, that is like the coolest way to represent the character.
Yeah.
But yeah, so she and Cable were like, I love them so much in this movie. And so yeah, at the end of this film, Cable sort of does him a solid and then uses his last thing to rewind time so that he can slip the token into Wade's little thing and saves his life, more or less. And so it was funny because then I was like, as it was nearing toward the end of the film, I was like, wait, his time thing, so he didn't have any juice left to go home. So how does he get home? Because he's like, I think I'll stick around for a little bit. And I was like, but what if he's not in Deadpool and Wolverine? And then I'm like, oh, right, there's a after credit scene where Yukio and Ellie fixed his time traveling device.
What have we done?
Yeah, the way she delivered that was so dramatic. Like her eyes were watering and everything. And I was like, oh, wow. And then, of course, that classic scene of just all the scenes of Wade turning back time.
If I can turn back time.
So good. So I guess it's presumed that Cable eventually got home.
Yeah, I'm sure they'll address it.
I'm sure they will, right?
Like,
yeah, there's no way.
I'm pretty sure the first 10, 20 minutes is just going to be like...
Yeah.
Addressing like, this,
loose
this,
ends,
and this.
tying them up.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
explain what happened with him and Vanessa, like where their
Yeah.
relationship is at.
Yeah.
But
It'd be great. Can't wait.
That's next.
Dear future me, future us, we love this movie. Oh my God. Hope you had the best time.
It's next Thursday.
It happened already. In
At time of recording, it's yes. But
hey, past me. hope you loved that movie. Or hey, future me. Wait, which one is me? So on to love interest. So this isn't as spicy as I thought it was going to be. You know, at first I had to really think about it. I was like, God, I know he had at least one, but he does have two. Cable has two love interests when it comes to comics. First one is Aaliyah Dayspring. Not the same spelling. Baby girl. Aaliyah.
I know. Dayspring?
Dayspring is her last name. And so this is the crazy thing. So rewind back to Mini-Me, opening up her Jim Lee comics, looking at her trading cards. And so like the perplexion that was on my face every time I read Cable cards or anything Cable was because they would spell out his name and it'd be like Nathan, Ascani-san, Dayspring, Charles, Christopher Summers. And I'm like, why does he have so many names? And it's because of all these factors. So Ascani he adopts because of the Ascani clan. Dayspring is because of Aaliyah. Charles is his middle name. Christopher is his second middle name because of his grandpa, which is Corsair. His name is Christopher Summers. And then Summers is his last name. And then if you tag on Pryor, oh my God, the kid has 9 names basically. And so anyway, Aaliyah Dayspring, aka Jen Scott. Jen Scott. Jeff's face. He's so offended. Jen Scott.
It's spelled like that?
It's spelled like Jenskot. Jen Scott. I promise I know, it's really bad. So Aaliyah was a member of the Ascani clan. Once again, they believed not only that Cable would be the Messiah, but that the ancient X-Men were deities. And so, they basically wanted to bring this child to fruition so that he would save them all. And so under her instruction, Nathan, future Nathan, we're talking adolescent Nathan, or teenage, whatever you want to call him. Nathan came to know more about Ascani's beliefs and ultimately joined a guerrilla army as an adult. And then of this clan, God, this is where we're getting really crazy. So the army faction of the Ascani are called Clan Chosen.
Okay.
Cable becomes a part of this army. And he starts to have the tutelage that he needs to be to become this Messiah. And so through survival, basically, Aaliyah and Nathan then become closer, and then they have their own share of dramatics, similar to his parents. She is a redhead. Just to answer your question, she's a redhead. And so naturally, the two fall in love, they get married, and then Aaliyah adopts the name Jen Scott after Jean and Scott. Puts them together, and that's her name.
Corny.
I know, it's really bad. I think I have a couple of trading cards of her. And so the two then had a son named Tyler Summers, who then was raised in the same belief system of the Ascani. And so unfortunate for them, however, Aaliyah then suffered some fatal wounds during an attack by enemy forces and then dies, because that's what they do they fridge bridge. I think we talked about fridge bridge with Gwen Stacy, but she has served her purpose. They have killed her off, and now she's left Tyler and Cable alone. And so we're not going to go too much further into the Tyler rabbit hole, but he unfortunately does become a villain in his own story. And he rises to power with his own supervillain group. And then he dies at the hands of a future Wolverine, which is, of course, the tragic end to end.
What else is new?
I know. So, of course, there is no cinematic counterpart when it comes to Aaliyah, but we will talk about her a little bit more very shortly. And then next up, oh God, if I hadn't been confused already, oh man, Hope Summers. Okay. This is gonna get a little tricky. So
I'm exhausted.
I know. I'm so sorry. So while we don't know too much about Hope herself, so again, this is Hope Summers, as in Cable's love interest. Just for further clarification, remember what I'm saying?
sense family affairs.
Something like that. So her story is heavily intertwined with Cable's adoptive daughter. So the adoptive child, her origin begins after the decimation event in which Scarlet Witch left less than 200 mutants depowered. So there's Hope, there's Cable, and there's this new child. Okay? New child. The child is the first mutant born after decimation. So almost all of the mutant population have been depowered. Thanks to Scarlet Witch, your girl, saying no more mutants.
Hey, she's just
She's
she's doing what she thought was best.
She was doing what she thought was right. Yeah.
Hey,
So
I gotta support.
so
just
funny.
like her dad.
Okay. We're not gonna go into Magneto sympathizing now. You chaotic fool.
These X-Men families, god damn.
I know. Oh my
The
gosh.
more we talk about X-Men families, the more I'm like, you know what? Maybe the Avengers aren't that bad.
No, it's
But now I'm
so
starting to
wild.
realize, damn, everyone just sucks.
They're crazy. Oh, it's so deep. So it's all over the place. So this child is presumed so powerful that when Cerebro detected her, it exploded. This is how powerful this child is. And so at this given time, this then sent Reverend William Stryker, his team of purifiers, then go after her. The Christian fundamentalists seeking to destroy all mutants in the future go after this child. And although all of the children in that town were murdered, Cable was able to swoop in, save this child, believing, like people believed that he was a messiah, he believed that this child was going to unify and save both human and mutant kind. Whereas others, including Bishop of all people, then believed her to be the equivalent of the Antichrist. This kid, I know this kid's a big deal. So Bishop is on their tail. He's trying to capture this child. He's like, no, she has to die. She's going to destroy us all. Cable's like, I don't believe that. Takes her to the future. And then he's finally able to settle along the timeline with she and Hope. Okay? Hope, the love interest. So they, as a 3-family unit, move along. They basically just survive and keep the child alive in the future. Unfortunately, fate catches up to them, and Hope is shot at their new settlement, and then leaves the child and Cable to fend for themselves. And so, as they go about, I believe Cable brought the child to a church for safety.
Yeah.
And a priest or somebody says, well, what is the name of this child? And then he decides, he's like, her name is Hope.
Yeah.
Named her after his love interest. So it's then that she is given her name Hope. And so we're not going to talk about Hope. She is a whole other complex.
That sounds exhausting.
And just as you would imagine, also a redhead.
Dude, there's got to be something with
They
redhead. There's
all
got to
look-
be like something on their board where it's like a non-negotiable. It's a must.
Yeah.
If this person is this complex and this crazy, they've got to be a redhead. Like, who hurt that person?
I know, it's so crazy.
It had to be a redhead.
It had to be a redhead. There was redheads. So, Hope Summers in cinematic continuity. So there's no definitive cinematic counterpart. However, in my rewatch of Deadpool 2, the woman who I believe is supposed to be Hope is portrayed by Haley Sales, because there is a part during the full flashback scene that they show the wife and child. And so that woman is portrayed by Haley Sales, and then Isli Hiroven portraying the daughter, referred to as Hope. So I understand why they didn't call them both Hope. It's too confusing. They're both present at the same time. So the daughter is Hope in the movie. Does that make sense?
Okay.
takes a minute, right? You're
Yeah.
like, hold on. So the wife has no name in Deadpool 2, and the child is Hope already. Cable's daughter.
Got it.
So yeah, unfortunately the two meet their fate thanks to Fire Fist, aka Rusty Collins. And then the teddy bear that Cable carries around, drenched in Hope's ashen blood, is ultimately the character that carries them along throughout the entire film. So thankfully, at the end of Deadpool 2, they get their happy ending, sort of, we assume, because the teddy bear's quite all right. And this is another one. I'm telling you, man, these things are so complex. Like, they just can't possibly do it in live action. So in animation, sure.
Easily.
Yeah. And so we might see that happen. Maybe season 3 or 4.
Yeah, live action, that's really hard to
It's
depict.
very hard,
in
yeah.
a 2-hour movie?
Exactly
No.
right. Yeah. It would have to be a Cable standalone, and even then.
Like, imagine having, like, a Summers movie. And it's just, like, the core 3. But that is, like, how do you even... What?
Exactly right. So, let's move on to notable adversaries. So when it comes to Mr. Sinister and Apocalypse, the most crossover we see of those two are solely in the animated series. So we're not going to talk about them right here, but we'll likely talk about them a little more when we finally tackle Cyclops. Oh my God, it's going to be a 10-hour episode, I swear to God. But for now, however, for Cable, we do have two characters in particular that we can talk about. First being Rusty Collins, aka Fire Fist. So although he is mostly not a bad guy whatsoever in the comics, these two absolutely have nothing to do with one another in the comics, let alone Deadpool. He was basically pulled into the films as a B-side character of like, oh, let's pay homage to somebody. And so in the films, Rusty Collins, Fire Fist, is primarily portrayed by Julian Dennison. So this is the young Kiwi dude who's got the flaming hands and
Fire Fist.
Yes, the guy, the Kiwi, and he's portrayed as an adult by Salah Baker. So again, yeah, he's a Kiwi fire kid from Deadpool 2 who becomes a murderous mass killer in Cable's lifetime, his timeline, and he also becomes the two become arch nemesises as a fact, because at one point Cable says like he has gone up against him several times in his future. So much to the point that that's why Rusty comes after his family. Yeah. So, and of course, Cable's an army man, self-referred to as an army man in the movie. So, it's worth noting that this is what I believe was the first notation of Essex in live action continuity. So, Rusty came from an Essex house for mutant rehabilitation. And the follow-up of Essex in cinematic continuity is from New Mutants. And we mentioned this in our Gambit episode as well, that it's referred to as Essex Corporation, which of course is the last name of Mr. Sinister. His name is Nathaniel Essex. So he's already around. I'm just like waiting for him to come in. It's kind of like the not Morbius. Oh my God, I said Morbius. It's kind of like the Mephisto thing where everyone's like, he's coming, and then he shows up. Yeah, same thing is like Mr. Sinister has been creeping in for the last 5 years, and no one's really paying attention to it. So when he finally makes his entry into the cinematic universe, oh boys, it's going to be interesting.
We'll see.
Interesting. So yeah, that's it as far as cinematic villains go, or arch nemesises go for Cable. But last but not least, I wanted to talk about one more character. Strife. So we very briefly mentioned Strife once upon a time. So when Scott sent Nathan to the future to be cured of the technovirus, Ascani then cloned the baby as a contingency plan. Literally as a like, if this goes sideways, at least we have another one. Jeez. It's like right Twix and left Twix. It's really messed up. It's like, they're babies. You can't just
clone them out of a contingency.
It's terrible. And so while Ascani is able to halt the spread of the virus in baby Nathan, to which he then later on holds back with his telepathy or his telekinesis. Apocalypse's forces infiltrate the camp, then kidnapping the clone in the process, thinking it's the purebred. So Apocalypse then raises the infant under his rule, naming him Strife with a Y. Mm-hmm. I mean, that goes without saying. It's pretty self-explanatory where the namesake came from. And he planned to also use Strife's body as a vessel for himself to transfer into. So Apocalypse is looking to essentially extend his life. Jeff's just rolling his eyes.
Loser!
Because
I mean, yeah, it's literally him in the series.
Yeah, exactly. He needs another vessel so that he can live on and rule mutant kind for the rest of, forever. Though he's ultimately, Strife is ultimately unfit due to being a clone. So he still grows into a madman nevertheless, and then he wreaks havoc in every way imaginable. Quick trigger warning. It's apparently also cited that he raped Aaliyah under the guise of Cable, and that he could potentially be Tyler's father. Which would kind of explain why Tyler then grew up to be a complete S-bag.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they got a lot going on. Thankfully, and thank bejeebas, there is no cinematic counterpart. At least not yet. I don't think they'll bring him in. He's not very interesting. I won't say interesting, but it's we've done this clone saga already. We've seen it with Maddie. You can't top Maddie. Let me just say, you can't top Maddie. Gwen Stacy has a clone. Still not as interesting as Madelyne Pryor. So let's just leave that alone. So for other versions and in other media, there is one particular variant I wanted to talk about. I was going to talk about Kid Cable. Don't really need to do that. Instead, we're going to talk about Nathaniel Nate Gray, X-Man of Earth 295, aka the Age of Apocalypse. So, in Age of Apocalypse, Scott and Jean had this kid thanks to genetic tampering per Mr. Sinister. He finally got what he wanted. He got the two purest Omega level sort of mutants that he could find. And he creates this kid, Nathaniel Gray. And so, unlike Nathan, Nathaniel did not get infected with a technovirus, which allowed him to embrace the innate powers he inherited, and he also became one of the most powerful mutants in his era. The big kicker with Nathaniel, however, is that when he attempted to reach out to his mother, so he didn't know his mother in this era of X-Men, he unconsciously resurrected Madelyne Pryor in the process. And in Age of Apocalypse, the thing about Madelyne is that she refused to die again. She was like, no, I'm not doing this again. Stayed in continuity, and she sticks around. And so the weird thing is they got kind of a trigger warning here. They have a particularly questionable dynamic.
Eesh.
It's a little bit of Oedipus going on with those two. I'm pretty sure she was dating a version of Warren Worthington or Havoc. So Angel, who might have been Death, a Horseman Death at that time. She was dating Havoc, who is Alex Summers, aka Cyclops' brother.
No. No.
Oh, I didn't even get into that.
No.
We'll get there when we talk about Maddie Pryor. Ooh. She slept with him in between when she was fighting with Scott in the comics, by the way. And she's dating him as recent as last year.
No.
So anyway, Maddie, we'll talk about Maddie eventually. So great. I love the drama. So yeah, Nate Gray, I really enjoyed that character as a whole. He kind of tapered off after a couple of years when Age of Apocalypse lost its hype, but very interesting version of Cable, or not Cable for that matter. And in video games, Cable appears in about 14 video games to date.
Holy.
I know, including Marvel vs. Capcom 2, where he's voiced by his X-Men The Animated Series voice actor, Lawrence Bain, which then leads us to our next topic, which is animation. So We've talked a lot about this X-Men 97 version, but Cable has his fair share of episodes in X-Men the Animated Series, but most recently voiced by one of my favorite X-Personas, Chris Potter, aka the original Raging Cajun Gambit himself in X-Men 97. So, I mentioned up top, he was never really addressed as Jean and Scott's kid in X-Men the Animated Series. But yeah, we did get to see the breadth of Cable's origin story in 97. And of course, on the other side of the fence, we have the reckoning of Madelyne Pryor, which really spiced things up. So that's who we really have to thank for getting to know this character in the modern ages. And yeah, we first saw Cable, it was so crazy because I had been waiting for him to come in. I was like, Chris Potter, where is he? And then he finally came in during the Genosha scene of all episodes. I think he had been trying to save Maddie. It was like the 20th time he said. Yeah, it's so nuts.
Nathan?
I know. You have your father's eyes. Mom? They're good eyes. But yeah, fast forward a little bit. He then lost his cybernetic arm to Bastion, and then he got left behind in present time. So they have split off into 3 segments. And so as of now, in X-Men 97, Cable is still in quote-unquote present time, while his parents are now in the future with baby him. And then Rogue and Magneto and
they're in
Beast
the past.
And Charles are in the past with Ensabanur.
Yes.
So yeah, everybody's time displaced. So we'll see what happens in the next season. Hopefully they're officially announcing or cobbling together something soon, and we'll get a release date. But yeah.
Is Hall H, the Marvel panel of Hall H, going to be this, is Marvel animation?
So that's the question. I didn't look up all the details yet, and obviously they don't even tell you. They want it to be a surprise. But in 2022, because Marvel skipped in 23, just as a reminder, in 2022, Hall H was occupied by Marvel Studios, whereas Marvel Animation had its own panel in Ballroom 20, which is the second highest.
Yeah.
And so I was there for both of them.
Yeah.
And they were on separate days. So I don't know. I think this year,
see.
I think they're putting it together in Hall H, especially because of the Deadpool Wolverine stuff.
We'll see.
Mm-hmm. So, almost was. So I was really looking forward to finding something on this. So back in the day, Wizard magazine, I think you saw this, social media, people were circulating this Wizard article with the fan castings that people wanted before X-Men, the movie, came out. And Wizard had cited Clint Eastwood as the fan cast for Cable in live action.
All right.
Yeah, and it's actually, I believe, I don't know if Rob Liefeld said it, but I do think that Clint Eastwood was kind of an inspiration for Cable because
the voice,
the
look a little bit,
because he's always
the hair, the face,
like a futuristic cowboy, very much, which they've kind of adopted now in The Mandalorian. How he has his cape and it's draped across his chest and over one shoulder type of deal. It's very good, bad, ugly. But as revealed to comicbook.com, Cable co-creator Rob Liefeld himself confirmed that Brad Pitt was very much cast as Cable early on for Deadpool 2. And even director David Leitch began prepping for stunt work with him.
Wow.
That's how deep into the role he got. And so, unfortunately, the plot changed course, scheduling got all muddled, and the role ultimately went to Josh, but he's still portraying
He's still technically in there.
Vanisher for a hot 2.5 seconds, if even that.
If that.
Yeah, I think it was literally 1.8 seconds
something
or something
like that.
Yeah, so that's more or less why he's in this film at all, and it's fun to realize that after the fact. Otherwise, I did find some people who made the final list, and that included Viggo Mortensen, Michael Shannon, and Liam Neeson, which all would have been really interesting.
Very interesting
prospects. Yeah, I could see Viggo. I could see Liam too. Actually, Michael Shannon.
Probably the least out of it.
Yeah, he has a particular look because he's Zod, right, and Superman.
Yes.
Yeah, he's got like a certain characteristic to him. And it's a little different. But Vigo and Liam, holy moly.
Interesting.
That would have been great. But I love me some Josh Brolin, so
I agree.
it's all good.
I can't disagree with that.
So, future of the character in the MCU, what do you think, Jeff? Will we see Cable again?
I think yes.
Will it be Josh Brolin?
Don't know.
Yeah.
Doubt it.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Baby Cable? Kid Cable?
Like him as kid? No.
No, like, do you think we'll see like a
that,
younger version of Cable?
I feel like, I mean, after seeing X-Men 97,
yeah.
I feel dude, it's so hard, but this could be like way down the line, but at some point the X-Men is going to have to get revamped. And obviously for the MCU.
Yeah.
When that's going to be, I don't know. But after watching X-Men 97 and like the rejuvenated like viewpoint on it, I think you have to do like a Summers kind of type thing. And like at least play into that.
Yeah.
Like that hasn't been depicted in live action yet, right?
No.
Like a Summers family.
No.
That would be crazy. But it's just like
Drama.
I feel like you should like explore like it's like you can't have Scott Summers without Jean Grey.
No.
But you can also and Madelyne Pryor. Well, you can't have that. You can't have them without Madelyne Pryor. And you can't have those three without Cable.
Yeah.
So at least in some form, those four together, because it's like if you introduce like Scott and Jean, but then when you have Cable, you're like, well, technically, Cable's not Jean's kid.
You're learning.
So then you're gonna be like, well, now you have to have Madelyne in there,
and
you can't have just and you can't just have Scott and Jean in a happy relationship when it's not great because of Madelyne.
Exactly.
And you can't have that without Nathan.
Right.
And you can't have that without a technovirus. And you can't have a technovirus without Mr. Sinister. And you can't have Mr. Sinister without another opposing force.
Exactly.
Because he needs some,
It's all connected. It's all connected. All
Yeah.
of it. So it's kind of like, that's again, and we've said this in multiple episodes, that's what is so deeply brilliant about X-Men 97, is that they were able to, in 3 episodes flat, compress all that lore, amalgamate it in the right ways, like a nice little Rubik's Cube, and they're like, boom, makes sense. Great. And so if they were to take that route, if they took that route in cinematic continuity, would you be good with that kind of treatment? Where very much like episode 1, boom, you already have the team. You already know who they are. You already know what they can do.
Yeah.
And then here comes their first problem. Here comes their second problem. They deal with it. Great. Then boom, this is the rest of X-Men in the MCU.
Yeah.
I think I'd be good with that. So if they took some liberties like that, sure.
Yeah.
But again, I hope to God they just skip over the Phoenix Saga. We've seen it too many times.
I mean, it's all they talk about.
I know. But do I want to see it done right? Hell yeah, I want to see it done right. It's never going to get there. Even under Marvel Studios, don't waste the time. Move forward.
It's a lot.
There's so many other storylines to do. But yeah, I would like to see Cable again. Don't know what form. Probably won't be Josh Brolin, even if we do get a little bit of him in Deadpool Wolverine. But yeah, I'd like to see the character again in some way.
Yeah.
That isn't animation, because we're definitely getting a little more of him.
Yes.
So, last but not least, suggested reading. Oh my God. I couldn't tell you. I think I read over 30 comics over the weekend. But so I narrowed it down to various issues of Uncanny X-Men and X-Factor leading up to the Inferno event for Baby Nathan. The summers are messy. So you have to follow how messy they are, especially
Guys, it's not good.
in Inferno. It's so wild.
good.
Oh my God. Rereading the whole Maddie thing, I was like, this is why I liked her so much. She had so much going for her, and it just went kaput. And of course, the New Mutants number 86 and 87 from Team Louise Simonson, Rob Liefeld, Bob Wiacek. I messed that up. Wiansek, Bob Wiansek, and Glynis Oliver for Cable's first entry into the modern age. X-Force Volume 1 from Team Fabian Nicessa, Rob Liefeld, and Brad Van Kata. And then last but not least, Cable solo titles from 1993 and 2024, as well as 2020, featuring Kid Cable. So he's the one that I didn't get to today. Don't really need to. He's just a younger version of Cable. He looks like Cable, but he's a younger version. So he's got white hair and he's a kid.
Yeah.
But he's already been through the thicket of it. He's really funny. I liked that version of the character very much. Go get you some of that Cable. And with all of that, oh my God, dear friends, thank you for sticking with us. That is the end of the show.
Oh, yeah.
Love me some Summers. We've crossed off one of the many. We've got so many more to go. Jeff's just shaking his head.
Dude, the more we do with each member of the Summers family, the more I'm just gonna like just talk smack on them and be like, what?
Which is crazy because, by the way, we have seen Havoc. So we could cover his brother, we could cover Scott, we could cover Jean. Maddie can get her own profile because she's been in enough episodes.
I just feel like
so we can at least cover 4 more of them.
Scott and Jean, I'm honestly scared to know anything more than what I know.
It's a lot.
I don't want to know.
Jean.
Because the whole episode,
Jean alone.
Literally, the whole episode is just gonna be me going, Jean,
Scott,
Jean,
Scott,
son,
Jean.
I'm not like my father. I won't leave. Leaves.
we gotta learn more lines so we can really fill it up.
No.
But yeah, thank you for listening. Our next episode. So with the arrival of Deadpool and Wolverine, join us next as we finally discuss the film, not spoiler free, entirely filled with spoilers, as well as takeaways from San Diego Comic-Con. So stick around for that.
Oh,
and
yeah.
finally, thank you to all of our Patreon supporters and a special We Are Groot salute to Ariel, Joe, Liz, Tyler, Andrew, Katie, Melanie, Chris, Edgar, Ashley, Nats, Andrea, Eve, Jenny, Laura, Sherry, Robin, and Ed. If you want to join the pack, please do. Just hit the link in our show notes and get you some of that. And follow us on social at STRKCNTRST. And if you like what you hear, please review, rate, and subscribe.
Once again, thanks for listening. We will catch y'all in the next one.
See you later.
Bye.
Bye.
I belonged in those stories too, growing up, fighting alongside.
You were. You always were.
I'll tell you, those legends really didn't do my folks justice.